Welcome to AIGA Real Talk. It's so good to see so many of you here. Wherever you're coming from, I'm seeing some in the chat. I even saw some from my own neighborhood. So I'm Lauren Yanko. I'm really glad you're joining us today. AIGA Real Talks are about a space where we can drive conversations that move our industry forward. I'd love to know where you're joining us from, so drop that in the chat. I'm an outgoing board member of AIGA, and I see Alberto, who's stepping in to take my place here. I'm very excited, and I'm also a proud president emeritus of the vibrant AIGA Boston chapter. I see some folks from Massachusetts, California, Puerto Rico, Utah, Virginia, Canada. Ooh, Francis is here from Dallas. Nice. And we've got Chicago. And Ashley's here too. Wonderful to see so many friends. Okay. This series was created because we believe the most powerful conversations happen when we're honest about our challenges and not just our portfolios. So today's Real Talk is about something we're all noticing, whether we're talking about it or not. The event is titled DEI's New Look, and Michelle and I are going to change that a bit and adjust it to DEIA's New Look because we really need to include that accessibility component. But DEIA's New Look, what's really behind the language shift? Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to explore what's really happening as organizations walk back, water down, or quietly repackage their equity work. And I'd also like to touch on some companies that are standing their ground so that we can really examine all the ways in which our commitments to equity do or can remain persistent. We're joined today by my amazing co-host, Michelle Leclerc, a design leader from AIGA Los Angeles, whose work centers on equity, social change, and creative accountability. Mickey, as she loves to be called, welcome and great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And it's so great to see so many familiar faces in Los Angeles and DC and everywhere. Hi, everyone.
All right, so let's get into it. And remember, drop your questions in the chat because we'd love to engage with you throughout this conversation. It's your space too. And we love reactions. I love emoji reactions.
Give us all the emoji.
All right. So my first question for you, Mickey, is when did you first notice the shift away from DEIA language and how did it show up?
So there were a lot of signs, right, that we might be shifting away from DEI language. But I think the most important shift occurred in Trump's January 20th executive order. And I'm going to have to read this because it's long. It was called Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing. It called it a public waste and discrimination, among other things. Interestingly enough, actually, in moments during this order, they were inclusive enough to call it DEIA as opposed to DEI, adding the letter for accessibility in there. And I kind of call that a subtle win for DEIA.
Me too.
So, right?
Yeah.
Always look on the bright side. So this order demanded that these programs, grants and contracts be terminated within 60 days, and it left it up to the new administration to determine what appropriate civil policies should exist. The administration believed that current DEIA policies resulted in poor performances, despite several studies finding otherwise, and we can cite some of those studies in the chat. What's your experience been, Lauren?
So, of course, I noticed all those things you just mentioned. And what I really saw is a lot of teams that are laid off with people that I knew were on them. So I heard more about the immediate impact of like an entire team at the CDC. I probably shouldn't be naming names of companies, so sorry about that. But I saw both teams getting laid off, programs rolling back, DEIA, and some teams that I had connected with prior to this order becoming silent. At TripAdvisor, where I work, we had established a product inclusion steering committee, and some of the initial work we did was to build a lot of resources and best practices for all teams throughout the company. We brought in research from past employees who had done a lot of work in this space. And we also talked to other tech leaders who were doing the work too. And yeah, what really surprised me is some of those tech leaders we talked to, I just saw all of their statements disappearing in their work. And that really affected and disheartened me. What I experienced at my company is that we tweaked language for the descriptions of our employee resource groups, really just to make them seem as inclusive as possible. Everyone's welcome. But it didn't really change the effect of what our groups were doing. And I'm really happy for that. The European Accessibility Act also rolled out in June, and that affects any US company that has customers in Europe. So I'm curious from the audience, are you seeing DEIA work change or continue in spaces that you have connections with?
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Feel free to add your questions, but I want to ask Mickey, what's really at stake, do you think, when organizations start replacing equity terms with softer language?
So in my opinion, it doesn't really change the experience or the perspectives of those who are affected by systemic racism or ableism. It just increases the comfort of the people that use those terms because they might not be comfortable enough to use very specific terms when it comes to discussing specific groups of people. But that's important. So like, let's just take specific language versus non-specific language as an example, because I know that starts to sound vague. When we use the term Latino, instead of using the term underrepresented group, right? We're acknowledging the struggle of a specific group of people, the Latino community, in an effort to zero in on unique systemic issues and work to alleviate them. That's unique for this specific group of people. Underrepresented is non-specific. And so it could refer to every people group in some way, shape, or form, depending on how you interpret it. So I think if you're looking to eradicate DEIA altogether, then you would prefer we use neither term. So, you know, it just, like, when we use that term underrepresented group instead, we can still get to what we want to say. We can still talk about specific issues that face this group by being more specific about the group. And we can still derive the intended meaning from it. It just takes longer to get there.
Right.
Like my answer, very long.
Exactly. I'm seeing in the chat, Amanda saying she was in the middle of seeking out a DEI certificate when all the programs started to disappear, which is really sad. And Sonia's asking us, is dropping the term DEI just a way to avoid backlash for companies, or are they actually changing how they think about inclusion? And I think this is a question for us and also the audience, because we'd love to hear how you feel.
Yeah, like for us, because we have a delay in reading the feed. I think it really depends on the company and the intentions of the company and the resources they have. So if you're laying off your DEIA team or if you're moving them around, how you react to these issues and to these executive orders or anything that's happening is really going to rely on what resources you've allowed yourself to have. And who's the one doing the talking? And is it representative of the community that you're speaking to? What do you think, Lauren?
I really agree that I'm seeing, like, for my example with my own workplace, we have minorly changed some language, but we're still continuing to do the work, versus other teams that maybe have laid off their team that's doing the work and someone else has to step in. I think what you were saying earlier about the difference between using the term Latino versus an underrepresented group, it's really that we, even if you're not thinking about it, everyone is affected by DEIA. Allies should be participatory and not just performative. And even white people like me identify as women, they identify as queer, of a certain religion, or they have disabilities. It affects us all. So when you're feeling accustomed to privilege, what I'm seeing, I think Francis Miller say, is why this is affecting so many orgs. Some of it, I think, is just the discomfort. When you're accustomed to privilege, equity can feel like oppression, even though it's not.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing Lee Sean's comment in academic context. Lee Sean has also seen the term JEDI, which is justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I love that addition of justice, because this is a portion of how, we maintain equity, is that we are, also approaching the courts and making sure that everyone's perspectives are being seen. And, sometimes the courts aren't reflective of the community. So it's also looking at the makeup of the courts and the makeup of the prosecutors who are, not elected by the community. It's all of these things and how these things are made up and how the system affects those things.
Totally. We're getting some more comments in the chat, which I love how active it is. Giovanna's saying work has changed a bit because they work in a nonprofit that receives support from brands. And then Arcana, apologies if I mispronounced your name, but is saying that the university president where they work has asked them to continue EDIA work, and they're really thankful for that leadership. So it's a lot of different experiences. And I want to move into this question because we're facing different experiences and seeing different things. How do we know for the companies that maybe are seeming to roll back when an org is truly evolving its equity approach versus just repackaging it?
Well, I think we can't know that unless they're monitoring the outcomes and sharing them with us. In that case, I'd say keep that historical data from the first approach and compare it with the outcomes from the next approach. What does diversity look like at the company now that you've added these initiatives? What does the company performance look like as well? Because we've seen in a lot of studies that diversity does have a positive effect on company culture and on your performance. And, who's your audience and are you really serving them? Look at the makeup of your community, look at the makeup of your company and compare them, see if they are both similar. What do you think, Lauren?
I really like that example of monitoring the outcomes from like where you were before to where you are now and where you get even a few months from now to see what's changed, good or bad. I also think you can do things like when you're building features, you can do research with your audience and say, like, am I really serving them? Are you really helping folks that are coming to your site with facing accessibility issues? Are you serving communities? Are you supporting Black owners of restaurants? I'm going to be bringing lots of terms from what I do in my daily work, but are you supporting the customers that you're serving, partners or customers? I saw that Stacy said it reads like it all depends on how the leadership stands. And I wonder if there's a way to bring it up with your leadership and push back. So I wanted to move into this question of what emotional labor is involved in continuing equity work, really when this climate has changed like it has, and how can you protect yourself, and also how can you be courageous and still push forward?
So, yeah, I mean, I love this question. I think there's a lot of ways we can do that. I think mostly it's just being persistent, being a squeaky wheel, and not being afraid to be a squeaky wheel. It's also understanding what sort of approaches work with your leadership. And I think as designers, we do a certain level of mind reading because design is a visual language. It's the first language we all learn, but it is a language nonetheless. It's something that's used without words. And so we're actually uniquely adept to do that. So does direct communication work with the people in your agency, or is it more subtle communication and gentle conversations?
Mm-hmm.
I like to communicate directly. My husband likes to say I run towards the fight, and that's because I don't want anything to get lost in translation.
Totally.
And so, just suggesting maybe like gentle DEIA events, especially, at AIGA Los Angeles, we're doing a DEIA town hall next month. You're all welcome to join us. And that means being brave. It means putting yourself out there and listening to the concerns of the community and even where you fall short. And that can be hard for a lot of people, but ultimately we can't work to fix things unless we know what's wrong. And our community is in a unique position to tell us what's working and what's not working. And so we all should listen. What do you think, Lauren?
I think I agree in that I'm the one that's going to speak my voice at my company. And I think we have to be brave and also forgiving and kind to each other, because we're all learning together. We're going to make mistakes. We're responsible for learning and owning the mistakes, but we're not going to do everything perfect when we're doing this work. I think there was a question.
Yeah, I saw Shannon's question.
Right.
How do you think phasing out DEIA or doubling down efforts will shape bottom lines? For example, we've seen Target take a big financial hit while Costco seems to be thriving. I think it does depend on their audience.
Agreed. And it's interesting that I haven't been following Target much, but I feel like they did have a huge diversity team in the past, and I was seeing a lot of change at that company. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat, Shannon, like what your hypothesis is.
We'll have to wait for that because there is a delay on the chat for us. But yeah, please tell us more, Shannon. Shannon will also be at the DEIA town hall, and you can ask her those questions as well. She's a member of AIGA Los Angeles. She's a chair on our committee.
Love that. Glad that the AIGA community is showing up so much. Mm-hmm. Alberto is saying language is important. By softening language, we're washing off the progress of individual groups. it's important to also teach about the experience of others. It's not only takes longer to address, which is what you were saying, Mickey, but as it was mentioned, yeah, by softening, we're erasing our ability to track specific issues.
Absolutely. And unique issues that are unique to our communities, right? Like as a member of the Latino community, I'm feeling a lot right now. And these are unique to our community out here in California. And so we should be allowed to speak about these things and we should speak frankly. So I agree with you that language is preferable. I also think I can get there using non-specific language if you give me enough time to talk.
Yeah.
Because it does take a longer time and it does feel like it's almost intended to, but we will accept these obstacles and we will continue to push through them. And that's an important thing in DEIA work, is to be persistent, don't give up. A lot of these movements that I've worked on, I've worked with Campaign Zero on the BLM movement since we released like that first report. And when we released that report, you know, the whole climate at the time was just like, you know, are people going to listen? Are they going to read these statistics? And are they going to listen? Is there going to be action? And it took years. And then 2020 happened. George Floyd happened. Everybody had finally had enough. They'd been listening to these statistics. They'd been listening to the Black community talk about all of these injustices and what they were experiencing. And it finally came out, and the BLM movement began to gather like an incredible amount of support. And that persistence paid off, no matter how much pushback was given there. And I think we could take a lot from that movement and just continue no matter how long it takes. And no matter what words they want us to use, we're not going to change what we mean when we say them.
Francis is agreeing and saying we have a responsibility to bring the ethics and justice into our daily lives. And Shannon had followed up saying businesses and brands rely heavily on how they make people feel. So taking care of people will always lead to success. And I'm totally in alignment with that. I know we're getting short on time, so I wanted to address Joseph's
We could talk about
question.
this all day.
Yeah. Joseph has a really good question about what is one of the most actionable and impactful steps that someone can take, whether a leader or an individual, to assure their workplace is truly aligning with DEI practices. And I think this is great because Mickey and I wanted to give you some ideas and actions that you could take at your company. So let's roll into that question. I can kick us off if you want, Mickey.
Oh, please.
Okay.
I was like, which question?
Sorry.
Please kick us off.
How we can use our influence as through design, storytelling, and leadership to really make equity part of the system at our companies.
Oh, I love this question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As designers, we can actually integrate diversity into our processes. So ask yourself, like, who's making your stock imagery, your stock illustration, your fonts? Who's printing your brochures and catalogs? Who are you hiring to develop your websites? Find out. I like to click on the font designers in My Fonts, in what was it? Creative. Anyway, I know we're low on time. I use a lot of sources that show the font designers, and you can click on their bio. You can learn a little bit about them. I like to include that in my presentations. Who is making the font? Because not only is it, you know, knowing where everything is coming from and knowing that the work you're presenting is reflective of your own community and the community of Los Angeles, it promotes them, right? Because your clients see these people and they humanize the fonts. A lot of your culture goes into the work you create and you don't even realize it.
You can similarly do that with photos, stock photography, and something that we've done recently, through a huge brand refresh, is putting the customer more front and center and using all traveler photos in our marketing materials. So now we are able to use their handle, know their name, celebrate our travelers. I think you want to just keep learning and talking about it. You can partner with organizations like Disability In, which is an accessibility organization, and Leader, that can help you support learning and best practices. They can offer you a lot of training sessions. They have panels that can help you with research. And they have a lot of people on staff that live with disabilities and really want to test your products. You can also, in your own company, test features that you're building similarly with Disability In, but even within ERGs with your company, within research groups, test the features you're building with the communities you're building them for. Talk to folks at companies where you see DEIA work thriving and learn about how they got there, the challenges they faced, what strategies they took. Those are some examples of things that I found to be effective myself.
Absolutely. Those are great resources.
So our question to this group is, as you walk away today, think of what you're doing to make your organization more diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible. Do we have any more questions as we wrap up that we should get to?
Well, there's so many great questions and so many great perspectives. Absolutely, don't be afraid to share your perspective, even if it's different from ours. We love hearing everything, and we know that the only way we can thrive is through hearing everyone's perspectives and considering them.
What's great about this platform is that it's connected to LinkedIn, so we're going to be able to follow up, and all of you can continue the conversation after, because you'll get tons of comments on your LinkedIn page that you can respond to.
That's right. Don't be afraid to keep this conversation going. And the more you talk about it, the more comfortable you'll be with discussing it if it's new to you.
All right. Well, we're just about at time, so I want to wrap things up. Mickey, it's been a great conversation. I wish we could talk longer. I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface, but we did give some good examples, so I hope that will inspire folks, and we're happy to continue chatting with you offline. Thank you for all showing up and the great questions. Again, thanks to Michelle Leclerc from AIGA Los Angeles, and thanks to her chapter for showing up to support and learn. If this conversation stirred something up, again, keep it going. We can answer your questions on LinkedIn. Share your takeaways on LinkedIn. Tag AIGA Real Talk so we can keep the connections going between sessions. We're just going to keep pumping that up because it's really fun after these Real Talk events. And don't forget, AIGA is a nonprofit membership organization dedicated to supporting designers and creative communities. Membership helps us invest in your career, the design profession, and programs like these. You can learn more at aiga.org. We'll be back on July 25th, and check out AIGA's LinkedIn page to RSVP. I'm Lauren Yanko, and take care.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.